Ayakwe Neknamalita, and this is my channel, The Midnight Librarian, and today I will be talking about my review of A Sea of Unspoken Things by Adrienne Young. It's been a minute since I've done a review. I understand it's also been a minute since I've posted a video. We're not going to talk about it. I have been busy and I feel like I want a good bitch session. We're just gonna get into it. So Adrienne Young has been on BookTube for a little bit. I feel like has been mentioned on BookTube for a bit now. Everyone seems to sing praises for Spells for Forgetting, which I have yet to read, but I have read The Unmaking of June Farrow. I did enjoy that for the most part, but there's something about the author's note at the end that kind of made me go, so I kind of want to reread it and try to figure out if what I think is happening, which feels like tokenism in terms of just and lip service rather than like something actionable or like actually representing within the story, actually happened. But that's another thing. So we're talking today about A Sea of Unspoken Things, which is Adrienne Young's latest release. It released in January 2025 and I had pre-ordered it. The cover is absolutely gorgeous, and let's kind of get into the synopsis. We are following James. James is our main character. She is the twin of Johnny. James lives in San Francisco and she ends up kind of knowing before she ends up getting the call that her twin Johnny has died. So she goes back up to their small town in Six Rivers that she hasn't been back up to in like 20 years or so. Something happened that made her leave and she never went back. So now she's coming back to kind of fix Johnny's affairs, kind of clean things up. And they've always had that twinish intuition with each other, but she believes that it went beyond that. Like it was almost like a sort of paranormal feeling with one another. Like she could feel it went beyond that. But when she gets there and she starts figuring out what he was doing in his last couple months, because she felt like he didn't tell her everything, she's realizing that she didn't know her brother as well as she thought she did, and she kind of has to dig up some secrets in the town that were trying to stay buried. Like I said, I had pre-ordered this. I was kind of excited. Had really enjoyed this cover design, and when I first got it, I kind of read the first page and got even more like excited, but also that's when like a nervousness set in, because particularly this paragraph right here on the first page, it's I believe the first full paragraph. Sunlight flickered on the windshield as I turned the wheel and the road curved, tightening. Trees pressed in like a wall on both sides of the cracked asphalt, making the old highway that snaked through Six Rivers National Forest look impossibly narrower. Six Rivers National Forest is in Northern California, and when I say northern, I mean northern. San Francisco is and Bay Area is what a lot of people consider northern, mostly because it is like thought of that anything above Monterey Bay is Northern California, but Six Rivers National Forest is a good 6 hours north of San Francisco, and so it's actually near where I live. So I was kind of excited going, oh, is this supposed to be set locally? And the reason I'm nervous about this is because I feel like there's going to be misrepresentation or lack of representation. Both. I feel like both is going to happen. A misrepresentation of the area, a lack of representation of those who live here. I went and tried to go in open-minded, or just like it could not be here, it could just be near here. And so the town, Six Rivers, is actually kind of just a generic name of a made-up small town. But as I continued reading this book, I'm just like, this could be more and more set in my area. Six Rivers National Forest is a little east of where I live, but ultimately, like, as I kept reading the book, Adrienne Young kept putting in details, and I'm like, I feel like this is my area. If not my area exactly, like, near. And so I kept trying to figure it out, because it was kind of, like, ambiguous, right? And this is one of the reasons why I got nervous about it, is because I had read another book that was similar. It wasn't near my area, but it was in set in an area that I was familiar with up in Oregon. This was Shea Earnshaw's In the Wicked Deep, that one about a small town getting tourist attraction because 3 boys die every year because of 3 witches that drowned. That one I really nitpicked because it was based in Oregon. It was a made-up small town and just the details were wrong. So I didn't like it. I thought I was being overly nitpicky. And maybe I am for this too, because I live in the area. I've grown up in this area. But there were certain details that started coming out within this book that I'm just like, this doesn't add up. Micah, Johnny and James's like best friend growing up. Apparently he's a fly fisherman guide, which we do have fly fishing here. It's not very it's not as popular as they like regular fishing, but, and I admittedly have to look at the legality of this, but one of the things that she ended up saying at one point, James, was that Micah had to go up and had a job on the Klamath. I'm like, oh, okay, where? Because the Yurok tribe reservation has a lot, its borders are on 100 yards on either side of the Klamath for miles. And I don't think that that's a thing. So that is a little gray area. I'm like, okay, I don't know the legality of that, but okay, is he working with the tribe? Is he going more inland? In which case he's reaching Hoopa tribe, or is he going even further inland, which is the Karuk tribe, or is he going further inland up close to Oregon, or like, I don't understand, where are they? But then, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. And some of the details, I'm just like, okay, that doesn't quite add up in terms of like some things did though, in terms of like, it used to be a logging town and it's not anymore. It's more catered to those coming through for hunting, which I'm like, okay, yeah, kind of. But then to a degree, yeah. But then it was like, oh, they come to hunt elk, which California and elk tags are very few and far between. Now granted, this is another thing I haven't looked too into. In fact, like, I ended up having to ask my partner a lot of fact checking when it came to this, and in his terms, because he is a hunter here locally, and so are a lot of his friends, elk hunting, you have to have a tag. The tags are very few and far between because California just heavily regulates its elk populations. Clincher, though, of just like me just getting pissed about the locale of this. So just like, I kept thinking it was very ambiguous and just like somewhere in this area. But then what really didn't make sense to me and what really just kind of threw me off, I'm just like, Adrienne Young didn't even fucking visit this place. She didn't Google it. Like, basically she Google Maps it and just decided where Six Rivers National Forest was on the Google Maps was where this town was going to be, which even that I find problematic, because if you zoom in close enough, that's right in the section of Yurok Karuk and Hoopa tribal lands. And yet Adrienne Young is a white author. Publication of books tends to inherently be white centric. So unless an author that is white indicates that any of the characters are of a different race or ethnicity, I just assume all the characters are white, and so there is no diversity in this book. That was a problem for me because we have the highest concentrated California natives in this area. Not to say highest concentrated natives, LA and San Francisco take that, but highest concentrated California natives. It's 12% of the population. For there not to be any diversity, I feel is irritating. And it continued to just piss me off. At one point, James and Micah are driving down to Fort Bragg because Johnny is working, helped with a scientific study of owls, the spotted owl, which, accurate, okay. But they go down to Fort Bragg because he occasionally would meet up with someone else. That was part of the study. That was part of the group. And they would meet up occasionally in Fort Bragg every couple months. But we find out she's stationed in the Shasta Trinity National Forest. Fort Bragg is actually almost like smack in the middle between our area and San Francisco. It's a 3-hour drive and is along the coast. Shasta Trinity National Forest is east of Six Rivers National Forest. Like, you're getting inland. So for me, logistically, that makes absolutely no sense. Why would Johnny and this other researcher go completely out of their way down the 101 and go halfway down to San Francisco to meet up every couple months? That makes absolutely no sense to me. They would meet somewhere along 299. Weaverville would probably be the middle. Why? Like, getting out of your area, sure, I guess, but like, what? So, and then at one point, even further, James describes how she has to climb through sagebrush. She's in this this crevice, this gorge, and had to go through sagebrush. We don't, sagebrush isn't native up here. Sagebrush isn't here. Another thing you can look up on Google. It's pretty Googleable within the first couple links, Calscape being one of them, that will show a map of where sagebrush is in California. It's Bay Area, Central and Southern California, really. That point, I was just kind of like, you know what? Okay, I'm not going to even, what the hell? So immediately, automatically, like, I kind of knew that this wasn't going to be any more than 2 stars. Mostly because if you're setting your book in a place and writing about people in that place, then you need to do your research and due diligence and actually represent people in that place and that place's history. And so that just, the Klamath River particularly, when you Google that, a bunch of stuff is going to come up, because this has been in the news for contention for a while. The Yurok tribe and a bunch of other partners not just recently, have been working for years, literal years, to get 4 dams removed on the Klamath River to help restore it and its watersheds. They literally finished the last one, demolishing the last ones this last year. And it's the biggest project in the U.S. history to remove these dams. So to mention the Klamath River and not even mention the contention that comes with, just, it's so frustrating. So if I ignore all that, knowing that I'm probably going to be more nitpicky than others because I'm from here, right? And ignoring the fact that there is no diversity in this book. The plot and characters themselves fell absolutely flat. Okay, at one point, it was funny because when I found out that this was based locally, I'm like, oh, this could easily be one of the lagoons. This looks like one of the lagoons that we have up here. At no point were, aside from Fort Bragg, they were not, I mean, I assume they were along the coast, but Fort Bragg, only coast mentioned. And that's what I had heard someone else say, that like, they're just like, I don't know why it's a sea of unspoken things. There's no ocean at any point. But what is repeated like twice, which, yeah, multiple times in here, is you could fill an ocean with all the things we don't say to one another. I'm like, oh, you're really leaning hard into that title, okay. And literally, like, I knew nothing really about James other than she was an artist that ran away from her area to San Francisco, and that ultimately, like, she hasn't been really happy. That even though she claims to have had this deep connection with her brother, that she thought she knew everything about him, really, like, nothing showed that at all. Like, and as she was getting back into the groove of being in Six Rivers, like, honestly, we don't learn much of anything about anybody else. Like, no one really talks to each other. No one really speaks to one another. We get very shallow details about all of these characters. None of them I had a connection with. And I get that a lot of people don't need that character connection to enjoy a story. I do. So, ultimately, the characters fell flat. Plotline was meandering. We are very much in James's head. We are in her thoughts the whole time. There are so many repetitive words, not just the phrase, we could fill an ocean with all the things we don't say to one another, which is, like I said, repeated. So is smoke. It doesn't help that there's a dog named Smoke, but the phrase, the thought popped in, the thought filled my mind like smoke, and just like that drifted and disintegrated like smoke does. And I'm just like, oh, okay, we're really sticking with that one too. Okay, multiple times. There was just no, it's kind of a mystery of just like trying to figure out what happened to Johnny and who Johnny was. And the only point of interest went once I found out that Adrienne Young has never been here and barely Googled this area, if she even did, was the scientific inquiry in terms of the spotted owl. Like, I wanted to hear more about Johnny's involvement with that, and wanted to hear more involvement with that, but we hardly get any of that. It was like very lackluster. I could kind of, like, there was a certain point in the halfway point about, if then, that I kind of figured what happened. I could guess, and when it was revealed, wasn't surprised. The second mystery also wasn't that surprising. So ultimately this fell really flat, and ultimately, like, I've never wanted to bitch about a book this much. Like, if you know me in real life, then I'm sorry, I know that you've heard me bitch about this, but like, before, and it honestly helped me concise my thoughts a bit more for this video. But also, it's not my fault that you clicked on this video and decided to hear me rant about it again. So take that as you will. So yeah, one star. In all honesty, like, I've never been so upset with a book and its lack of accurate representation, the lack of representation in people in place, lack of just everything. This is so disappointing. And after everyone has been talking so highly about Adrienne Young's work, it was just so frustrating. So honestly, 1 star. And I do not recommend. Please, please, like, to all authors and aspiring writers, like, do your due diligence and like, ensure that the place that you're setting in, if it's not fantasy, is researched and accurately represented. I was complaining in a Discord, I believe it was the Lair, that, like, am I being overreactive? And like, so many people, it's such a safe haven. It was so great just to hear all these other patrons go like, no, actually, like, this is, like, feel free to rant about this. We feel it too in other areas, LA, Tennessee, like, all, and it's like, why isn't this talked enough about the accuracy of these places? And when I was reading it, all I could think was, like, I have never related so heavily to the main male love interest, what was his name, Ben, in Book Lovers. Like, I enjoyed Book Lovers a lot, but didn't quite grasp that. I'm like, oh yeah, that would be weird to, like, I know that there's been other books set in this area and I really hesitate to read them. I did not know that this was set in this area until I started reading it. So I didn't relate to him until I started reading this. I'm like, oh, I get it. That's why you hated that book so much. Because it was a misrepresentation of this town you grew up in. I get it now. I get it. I see you. I'm not even donating it to, like, typically with books that I know that I'm not going to reread again, that I didn't quite enjoy, and hope that someone else is going to enjoy it better. I typically donate it to the library I work at. I'm not doing that. I don't want to see this freaking book anymore. Will I read another Adrienne Young? I still have, I do have Spells for Forgetting checked out from my library through Interlibrary Loan. I don't know if I want to read it. This kind of, like, put a bad taste in my mouth. And I already kind of had, like, a, you know, that's like, there was something with the Unmaking of June Farrow, like, because ultimately I enjoyed it, and then there was a bad aftertaste, and I'm just like, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it was just me, possibly. But this was just a bad meal. Didn't enjoy it. So I don't want to see it. I don't want it. So I will be putting it on Pango. So yeah, that is my review of this book. If let me know your thoughts on it. I'm curious. If anyone else remembers the author's note in An Unmaking of June Farrow. I'm sorry I keep bringing this up because I'm pretty sure, and I have to, like, I want to reread this, but at the end, Adrienne Young ends up stating, like, oh, because a part of it is based in Jim Crow era South, but she wanted to be able to represent that there were Black entrepreneurs at that time, and so she made one of the restaurant owners, I think, or store owners Black, to show that there was Black entrepreneurs even during Jim Crow era. But when reading that, I'm like, which shop owner was Black? Because, like I said, Adrienne Young is white, and because publishing is so white-centric and less stated, I just assume all characters are white. I don't remember any particular character being stated that they were Black, that they were olive-skinned. There was no apparent, oh yeah, by the way, that character's Black. It very much felt like this afterthought of, like, oh yeah, and that character that is, like, there for a blip, Black, owns a shop, doing great for himself during Jim Crow era. It's just me. That's just me. It has nothing to do with this book particular, but has that flavor of Adrienne Young that I'm like, what is that? So if anyone else saw that, please let me know. Otherwise, I don't have a physical copy of that book, and I kind of want to get one, but at the same time, I'm like divided. So, but otherwise, let me know what you thought of A Sea of Unspoken Things. If you've read it, let me know. Or if you have read a book that was supposedly set in an area that you're very familiar with, and was misrepresented, let me know. Like, how did you feel about it? Which book was it? I'm curious. So, yeah, that's my review. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your patience with me. And I hope that you're in a mental mindset to enjoy your reading. I will see you in another video, hopefully at some point. Shoo.